Get out of here." The words echoed across the marble lobby, sharp enough to cut through the low hum of conversations and the soft chime of elevator bells. Heads turned. A few people froze mid-step. Others slowed just enough to witness what was about to happen. It was a Tuesday morning in Charlotte, North Carolina, just past 9. The city pulsed with its usual rhythm: bankers with leather briefcases, consultants balancing coffee cups and smartphones, security guards scanning badges with practiced indifference. The glass facade of Crowngate Financial Tower reflected the sun like a mirror of success. This was a place built to impress, to intimidate, to remind everyone who mattered and who did not. And then there was the man standing barefoot on the polished stone floor. He wore simple white linen, no logo, no tailoring, no attempt to blend in. His clothes were clean but plain, the kind you'd expect to see on a construction site or maybe in an old photograph from another time. His feet left faint marks on the marble as he walked, not rushed, not hesitant. Calm, unbothered. People stared. Some frowned. Some smirked. One man quietly lifted his phone and started recording. Behind the VIP reception desk, the attendant tightened her smile. She had worked here long enough to recognize disruption in under 3 seconds. She pressed the silent alert beneath her desk and leaned forward. "Sir," she said, her tone polished but sharp, "this is a private banking facility. The public shelter is 2 blocks south." The man met her eyes. "I'm not here for shelter," he said gently. "I am here about accounts that were lost, and an inheritance that was forgotten." A ripple of quiet confusion passed through the lobby. Before the receptionist could respond, the man added, almost casually, "I need to speak with your CEO." And with Elena Ramirez. The name landed like a dropped glass. The several employees looked toward the first floor teller windows. Elena Ramirez had worked here for 18 years. Same position, same blue uniform, always early, always quiet. The kind of employee management forgot because she never caused problems. For a moment, time seemed to hesitate. Before anything else could happen, let me pause here just for a second. If you were listening right now, tell us in the comments where you're rewatching from, and what time it is where you are. People from all over the world listen to stories on Heaven Walks with Us, and we love knowing you're here with us. Now back to the story. From the far end of the lobby, a group of executives approached, parting the crowd as they walked. At the center was Grant Holloway, CEO of Crowngate Financial. 53 years old, perfect posture, custom charcoal suit, the kind of man who moved as if the building itself belonged to him. He had built his reputation on numbers, precision, and control. Investors trusted him. Regulators respected him. Employees feared him. When he heard his name, he stopped. When he heard Elena Ramirez, he turned. Grant studied the barefoot man from head to toe, then laughed loud enough for everyone to hear. "You want to talk to me," he said, "about an inheritance." His eyes flicked toward the teller windows. From her, a few nervous chuckles escaped the crowd. Grant stepped closer, his voice dropping into something colder. "This is a financial institution, not a church, not a charity. And definitely not a stage for whatever performance you think you're putting on." Security guards shifted their weight, ready. The man in white didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply looked at Grant Holloway, as if seeing past the suit, past the title, past the power. "Grant Holloway," he said softly. The Grant stiffened. No one here spoke his full name unless they had a reason. "You have 90 days. The lobby went silent. "In 90 days, the man continued, "everything built on cruelty and theft will fall. And the one you ignored will sit where you stand." Grant scoffed, though something flickered behind his eyes. "Remove him," he snapped. "Now." As security closed in, the man turned his head slightly. His gaze met Elena's across the distance. He smiled not with pity, but with certainty. And then, without resistance, he allowed himself to be escorted out. No one noticed the countdown had begun. For several seconds after the man in white was escorted out, no one spoke. The revolving doors swallowed him whole, and the lobby seemed to exhale like a storm had passed without rain. Conversations resumed in low whispers. Shoes clicked again on marble. Phones slipped back into pockets, though a few recordings had already been saved, ready to be uploaded. Grant Holloway adjusted his cufflinks and forced a smile, the kind practiced in boardrooms when meetings went sideways. "Unbelievable," he muttered, loud enough for the nearby executives to hear. "Every city has its lunatics." Laughter followed, thin, obedient laughter. But something had shifted. Grant felt it as he turned toward the elevators. A pressure in his chest. A faint, irrational irritation he couldn't explain. He waved it away and stepped into the private lift that would carry him to the executive floors, far above the teller windows, far above people like Elena Ramirez. On the first floor, Elena sat frozen behind her station. Her hands rested on the counter, fingers lightly touching the edge as if anchoring herself to reality. She had seen public confrontations before angry customers, raised voices, but nothing like this. No one ever said her name in the lobby. Not like that. Not loud enough for strangers to hear. A coworker leaned toward her. "Elena, do you know him?" Elena shook her head slowly. "No." Her voice came out steady, but inside her thoughts raced. The man's eyes. The way he spoke her name, not with curiosity, not with mockery, but as if he had been looking for her. The branch manager walked by without stopping. No questions. No reassurance. Just the unspoken rule Elena had learned years ago. Stay invisible and you'll survive. By noon, the video was already circulating. Someone had titled it "Barefoot Prophet," kicked out of bank mentions teller by name. Elena didn't know this yet. She finished her shift like every other day, balancing drawers, counting bills, smiling politely at customers who barely noticed her face. But the lobby felt different now. Eyes lingered longer. Whispers followed her when she walked to the break room at 5:02 p.m. Elena boarded the city bus. She sat near the back, clutching her worn purse against her side as Charlotte blurred past the window. Construction cranes, office towers, billboards promising financial freedom she'd never tasted. She got off near a low-rise apartment complex just east of downtown, stucco walls, narrow balconies, laundry humming in the evening air. Home. Her apartment was small but clean. Second-hand couch. Folding table. 3 backpacks lined neatly by the door. "Ma'am," Sophia called from the kitchen. "You relate." Elena smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. Lucas sat at the table, textbooks open, headphones around his neck. Matteo was sprawled on the couch, already asleep, his school shoes still on. As Elena reheated rice and beans, Lucas glanced up. "Mom, people at school were talking about a video today." Her hand paused mid-stir. "They said a guy got kicked out of a bank. He was barefoot. And he said your name." The room felt suddenly smaller. Elena forced a laugh. People say a lot of things online. But later that night, after the kids were asleep, she checked her phone. Missed calls. Messages. A link from a cousin she hadn't spoken to in years. She clicked. There she was. Or rather, there she wasn't, just a blurry shot of the lobby, Grant Holloway's voice sharp with ridicule, and then the man in white. "I need to speak with Elena Ramirez." Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Elena stared at the screen, heart pounding. She almost didn't answer. Almost. "Hello," she whispered. "Ramirez," a calm male voice said. "My name is Daniel Whitmore. I'm an estate and probate attorney. I believe you received my message earlier. This matter is time sensitive." Elena sat down slowly. "Yes," she said. "You called about an inheritance." There was a pause on the other end. "Yes," the lawyer replied. "And I assure you this is very real." Elena closed her eyes. Somewhere in the city, Grant Holloway stared out from the 32nd floor, trying to ignore the echo of a sentence he couldn't shake. "You have 90 days." And the countdown continued. Grant Holloway did not believe in omens. He believed in spreadsheets, leverage, and preparation. In 30 years climbing the financial ladder, he had learned that fear was a tool useful when aimed at others, dangerous when allowed inside yourself. Still, as the elevator carried him upward that evening, he found himself replaying the moment again. The barefoot man, the calm voice, the way his full name had been spoken without hesitation. Grant shook his head and stepped into his office on the 32nd floor. To-ceiling windows framed the Charlotte skyline, glowing gold in the late afternoon sun. This view was his proof, his reward, his kingdom. He loosened his tie and poured himself a glass of imported mineral water, staring at his reflection in the glass. 90 days, he thought with a smirk. Ridiculous. His assistant, Vanessa, knocked lightly before entering. "Sir, legal called. They want to confirm your availability for next week, board prep." "Tell them I'll review the materials tonight," Grant said. "And cancel my dinner." Vanessa hesitated. "Also, communications flagged a video going viral." From the lobby this morning, Grant waved a dismissive hand. "Let it burn out. The internet gets bored." But as Vanessa left, Grant opened his laptop anyway. He watched the clip. The angle was imperfect, the audio shaky, but his laughter was clear. So was the silence that followed the words, "You have 90 days." The comments scrolled faster than he could read. That man knew his name. Why did he mention the teller? This feels biblical. Rich men always fall eventually. Grant slammed the laptop shut. At home that night, his penthos felt colder than usual. His wife, Margaret, was already asleep in the guest room, as she had been most nights since they stopped pretending to enjoy each other's company. Grant poured a whiskey this time and sat alone in the dark, staring at the city lights below. He didn't sleep much. The next morning, he arrived earlier than usual, 6:15 a.m. He was already in his office, scrolling through reports, forcing his mind back into familiar territory. Numbers calmed him. People didn't. Downstairs, Elena Ramirez arrived at work like she always did, 10 minutes early, uniform pressed, hair pulled back neatly. She hoped the whispers would stop. They didn't. Two tellers glanced at her and looked away. A supervisor studied her for an extra second before nodding curtly. A customer asked, half joking, "Hey, aren't you famous now?" Elena smiled politely, but her stomach tightened. 10:03 a.m. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Unknown number. She waited until her break. "Ms. Ramirez," the same voice said when she answered. "I understand this is overwhelming, but I need you to come to my office today. There are documents you need to see." Elena swallowed. "I can miss work. I need notice." There was a brief pause. "Ramirez, some things don't wait." She agreed. On the executive floor, Grant Holloway stood in the hallway outside the boardroom, addressing a small cluster of senior managers. "I don't want rumors spreading," he said sharply. "If anyone asks, yesterday was a security issue. Nothing more." One of the managers cleared his throat. "Sir, the teller, Elena Ramirez. She requested a personal day this afternoon." Grant's jaw tightened. "Why?" she said. "It's legal." Grant's eyes narrowed. "Legal." For reasons he couldn't explain, irritation surged. Elena Ramirez had existed in his building for nearly 2 decades without consequence. She was a background detail, a constant, a fixture like carpet. And now she was moving. "Approved," Grant said after a moment. "But keep an eye on it." By late afternoon, Grant found himself restless. He reviewed emails twice, checked the markets, answered calls he normally ignored. At 47 a.m. he opened his laptop again. That's when he saw it. A folder on his desktop. He was certain it hadn't been there that morning. The name was simple, read first. Grant stared at it, pulse quickening. He looked around his empty office, half expecting someone to be standing behind him. There was no one. He double-clicked the folder. Inside were files. Dozens of them. Transactions. Names, dates. His stomach dropped. This wasn't possible. Far below, Elena Ramirez stepped off the bus near a modest office building, clutching a folded paper with an address written in careful handwriting. She had no idea that, at the same moment, a man who believed he owned the floor beneath his feet was realizing slowly, unmistakably, that the ground was beginning to move. Grant Holloway didn't sit down. He stood frozen behind his desk, eyes locked on the open folder as if it might lunge at him. The office was silent except for the faint hum of the VAX system and the distant city noise 2 floors below. He scrolled. Each file opened with a soft click that sounded far too loud. Account transfers routed through shell companies in Delaware, then overseas. Investment products that never existed. Internal emails, he remembered deleting some of them, written late at night. Others sent casually between meetings. There were her documents too. Notes marked confidential. Too old for premium clients. Appearance does fit brand image. Accent raises concerns with private banking customers. Grant's throat tightened. These weren't accusations. They were records. Meticulous. Organized. Labeled by year. He slammed the laptop shut and laughed, short, sharp, humorless. "This is a hack," he said aloud, to no one. "Someone's trying to scare me." He opened the laptop again. The folder was still there. Grant reached for his phone and dialed Vanessa. "Get Marcus Reed up here. Now." 10 minutes later, Marcus stood awkwardly near the door, tablet in hand. He was good, one of the best cybersecurity leads Grant had hired. Young, precise. Calm. "What's the issue, sir?" Marcus asked. Grant turned the laptop toward him. "Those files. I didn't create them." Marcus frowned and stepped closer. "May I?" Grant nodded. Marcus connected a cable, fingers moving quickly. He scanned access logs, permissions, timestamps. His brow furrowed. "These files were created at 2:18 a.m., Marcus said slowly. "That's impossible," Grant snapped. "I was home. Asleep." Marcus glanced up. "The system shows your credentials. No remote access. No breach." "Delete them?" Grant said. "All of them." Marcus selected the folder and hit delete. The trash icon filled. He emptied it. Then, to be thorough, ran a secure overwrite. "Gone," Marcus said. Grant exhaled. "Good." The screen flickered. The folder reappeared. Same name, same place. Marcus stared. "That's not possible." "Do it again," Grant said, his voice tight. Marcus did. Same result. Sir, Marcus said carefully, I can reimage the entire system. Full wipe. Do it, Grant said. Now. An hour later, the laptop restarted with a clean operating system. Fresh desktop. No files. Grant allowed himself a thin smile. Then a text document appeared at the center of the screen. No folder this time. Just one file. 90 days. Text. Grant opened it. The message was short. Technology cannot erase sin. Only repentance can. You have 90 days. Grant slammed the laptop shut so hard the screen rattled. Get out, he told Marcus. Marcus didn't argue. That night, Grant didn't go home. He sat alone in his office, lights off, city glowing beyond the glass. He replayed the day in his mind, the barefoot man, the calm voice, the exact words. 90 days. Across town, Elena Ramirez sat in a small waiting room, hands folded tightly in her lap. The sign on the door read Whitmore Associates Estate and Probate Law. A receptionist smiled politely. Ms. Ramirez. Mr. Whitmore will see you now. The attorney was older, gray-haired, with a careful manner that inspired quiet confidence. He gestured for her to sit. Ms. Ramirez, he said, opening a thick folder, what I'm about to show you may sound unbelievable. The Lina nodded. People have been saying that all day. Mr. Whitmore slid a document across the desk. The paper was yellowed at the edges, stamped and notarized decades ago. This trust was established over 60 years ago, he said, with conditions that until now have never been met. Elena stared at the page, heart pounding. Why me? She whispered. Mr. Whitmore hesitated. Legally, I can explain every clause. But the timing, he paused. The timing is something I can tee. Back in the darkened tower, Grant Holloway opened his laptop one more time. The file was still there. So was the countdown. Day 90. And somewhere between two lives moving in opposite directions, the clock kept ticking. Elena Ramirez unlocked her apartment door just after 8. The hallway lights flickered the way they always did, buzzing softly above her head. Someone on the third floor was frying onions. A television murmured through thin walls. It was an ordinary place, worn but honest, nothing like the glass towers downtown, where her name had suddenly become a headline. She set her purse down and slipped off her shoes. Ma'am, Madio's voice came from the couch. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. You okay? Elena forced a smile. I'm fine, Mijo. Go back to sleep. Oh, in the kitchen, Sofa was finishing homework at the small table, earbuds in. Lucas stood by the sink, scrolling on his phone. They're still posting it, he said quietly, not looking up. The video. Elena's shoulders tensed. Lucas. They were arguing in the comments, he continued. Some people say the guy was crazy. Others say. They say it was God. Elena turned away, busying herself with the kettle. The word landed heavier than she expected. God. She had prayed most of her life, but quietly, privately. Faith, for her, had always been something you carried inside, not something you spoke aloud at work. That night, after the children were asleep, Elena sat alone at the table with her phone. Messages filled the screen. Old friends. Distant relatives. People she barely remembered. Is this real? Are you rich now? Be careful. This sounds like a scam. She opened the video again. This time, she didn't watch Grant Holloway. She watched the man in white. The way he stood. The way he didn't rush. The way he looked at her as if she mattered. Her phone buzzed. Daniel Whitmore Estate Law. She stared at the name for a long moment before answering. Ms. Ramirez, Whitmore said, his voice steady. I wanted to follow up. I know today has been unusual. Elena exhaled slowly. That's one word for it. I'll be direct, he said. What I have is not speculation. It's a legally binding trust. Verified, recorded. And yes meant for you. Silence stretched between them. I don't understand why now, Elena said. Or why today? Whitmore paused. Neither do I. But the conditions were clear. And as of this morning, they were met. Elena closed her eyes. What do you need from me? She asked. I need you to come in tomorrow morning, he said. Bring identification and courage. She almost laughed. After the call ended, Elena stood by the window, looking out at the parking lot below. A single streetlight cast long shadows across cracked pavement. For 18 years, she had kept her head down, did her job, went home, survived. Being invisible had been safe. But now she was seen. Downtown, Grant Holloway sat alone in the dark, laptop open, watching the number change. Day 89. For the first time in his life, the future didn't feel negotiable. Awed in a quiet apartment across the city, Elena Ramirez set her alarm for the next morning, unaware that the decision she had just made would place her on a path that would change far more than her own life. The countdown moved forward. Elena arrived at Whitmore Associates 10 minutes early. The office sat on the 12th floor of an older building, uptown, beige concrete, narrow elevators, a quiet dignity that didn't try to impress. The opposite of Crowngate's glass arrogance. As the elevator doors opened, Elena caught her reflection in the brushed metal. Same uniform, same tired eyes. But something underneath them had shifted. Ramirez, the receptionist, said warmly, Mr. Whitmore is ready for you. Daniel Whitmore rose from behind his desk as Elena entered. He didn't rush her, didn't smile too much. He simply gestured to the chair across from him and waited until she sat. I want to start by saying this, he said. In 40 years practicing estate law, I've learned to respect facts. Emotions don't move courts. Documents do. He opened a leather-bound folder and slid it across the desk. This trust was created in 1962, he continued. By your maternal grandfather. Elena frowned. My grandfather died before I was born. My mother never mentioned money. We were poor. Whitmore nodded. That's consistent with the record. The funds were placed into a restricted trust, no withdrawals, no beneficiaries until very specific conditions were met. He pointed to a highlighted paragraph. The trust was not tied to age, he said. Not to marriage. Not even to education. Elena leaned closer. It was tied to character. She looked up. Character. Whitmore reads slowly. The beneficiary must demonstrate sustained honest labor, must endure financial hardship without engaging in fraud or exploitation, must raise dependents with responsibility, and must not pursue retaliation against those who cause harm. Elena felt her chest tighten. That's not normal, she said. Whitmore gave a small smile. No, it isn't. He turned another page. Charts, statements, signatures. The initial amount was modest by today's standards, he said. But the trust was invested conservatively, rebalanced, protected from inflation. Over time, over decades, it compounded. He slid a printed summary toward her. Elena's breath caught. The number was unreal. She whispered it aloud, as if saying it too loudly might make it disappear. Whitmore watched her carefully. The funds are real, verified through federal custodians, and legally, they were yours. Elena pressed her palms flat against the table. Why wasn't my mother told? She asked. Whitmore hesitated. Because the trust stipulated that no family member could be informed until the conditions were fulfilled. It was unusually strict. She swallowed. And today, he said, the conditions were certified as met. Elena leaned back, overwhelmed. Whitmore closed the folder, but didn't he stand? There's something else. He reached into his desk drawer and removed a single envelope. Plain white. No return address. This appeared on my desk 3 days ago, he said quietly. My assistant swears it wasn't here when we closed on Friday. Security footage shows no one entering the office over the weekend. Elena stared at the envelope. Whitmore slid it toward her. It's addressed to you. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single page. The handwriting was careful, old-fashioned, unmistakably personal. This trust waited not for success, but for faithfulness. Use it to restore what will soon be broken. Do not fear power, fear forgetting why you were given it. Elena felt tears spill before she could stop them. Who wrote this? She whispered. Whitmore leaned back in his chair. That's the question I can't answer. Across the city, Grant Holloway stood in his office bathroom, gripping the sink. He had slept. The number on his screen had changed again. Day 88. He splashed water on his face and stared at himself in the mirror. The man staring back looked older, thinner, less certain. For the first time, Grant wondered not how to win, not how to spin, not how to delete, but whether there was anything left to confess. And, in a quiet office uptown, Elena Ramirez folded the letter carefully and placed it in her purse. She did know what was coming. Only that something ancient had been set in motion. And it was not going to stop. At exactly 2:15 m, Crowngate Financial Tower should have been empty. The lobby lights were dimmed to night mode. Elevators slept between floors. The security desk downstairs played muted cable news to stay awake. Camera 70, 8 of them watched every hallway, every stairwell, every door. All of them worked, except for one corridor on the 32nd floor. Later, technicians would replay the footage again and again, slowing it down, zooming in, checking timestamps. They would find nothing. No motion, no shadow, no anomaly. But at 2:15 am something moved. Grant Holloway's office door opened. Not forced, not unlocked. It opened the way doors do when they recognize who is on the other side. Inside, the office smelled faintly of leather and polished wood. The city lights outside glimmered like a constellation pinned to glass. Awards lined the walls: Financial Leader of the Year, Innovation in Banking, Community Excellence. A man walked barefoot across the carpet. He didn't touch the awards. Didn't look at the city. He went straight to the desk. The computer woke at his presence. No password prompt. No fingerprint scan. The screen simply turned on, as if waiting. The folders began to appear. Not downloaded. Not transferred. Appearing. Each one labeled with a date. Each one precise. Inside were records Grant Holloway had buried for years, transactions routed through shell companies in Delaware and Nevada, investment vehicles that existed only on paper, emails reassuring elderly clients their savings were safe while funds were quietly diverted elsewhere. There were files too. Employees dismissed for being a poor cultural fit. Women passed over for promotions after maternity leave. Older advisors quietly pushed out to make room for younger faces that matched the brand. Each file ended the same way. A short note handwritten in style, though typed on screen. I saw this. I heard them cry. I counted every dollar. The man in white read without hurry. He opened one final folder. Elena Ramirez. Inside were no accusations. No wrongdoing. Only a record 18 years of clock-ins. Perfect attendance. Commendations that never led to raises. Customer feedback praising her patience and honesty. At the bottom, another note appeared. Faithful in little. The man closed the folder. He stood, glanced once more around the office, then left. The door closed behind him. At 6:42 M. Grant Holloway arrived early again. He had slept more than an hour. The countdown haunted him. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard it ticking. He set his coffee down, opened his laptop, and froze. The folders stared back at him, neatly arranged, waiting. His heart began to race. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He opened one file, then another. Names leapt off the screen, numbers he recognized. Dates he remembered too well. This wasn't a threat. This was a ledger. Grant called Marcus Reed before his hands stopped shaking. "I need you here," he said. Immediately. By 7:10, M. Marcus was in the office, coffee untouched, eyes already scanning the screen. This is extensive," Marcus murmured. "Can you trace it?" Grant demanded. Marcus shook his head slowly. "There's no trace to follow. These files don't behave like data. They don't degrade. They don't register as foreign." He paused, then added quietly, "It's like they belong here." "Delete them," Grant snapped. Marcus tried. They vanished, then reappeared. He wiped the drive, reinstalled the system, replaced the hard disk entirely. The files returned. At 8:03 M. A new document appeared at the top of the list. "Read me first." Grant opened it. "You mocked the warning. Now you will see the truth." Day 87. Grant slammed the laptop shut and staggered back in his chair. "This isn't real," he said. "This is stress. Hallucination." Marcus didn't respond. He was staring at the screen with a look Grant had never seen before. Fear. Across town, Elena Ramirez stood at her bus stop, clutching her purse tighter than usual. The morning air felt sharper, clearer. She didn't know why she felt watched, not in danger, just noticed. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel Whitmore. "We've confirmed the custodial accounts. Everything is clean. We'll proceed." Elena looked up at the sky between buildings. For the first time in years, she whispered a prayer without asking for survival. She asked for wisdom. Downtown, Grant Holloway stared at the number on his screen. Day 87. And the city of Charlotte went on with its morning, unaware that something unseen had crossed a line, and that what was hidden was now determined to come into the light. A Marcus Reed had spent his entire career believing that every problem left a footprint. Data moved. Code logged itself. Breaches left scars. Even the most sophisticated cyber attacks followed rules Marcus understood better than most. What sat on Grant Holloway's laptop followed none of them. By mid-morning, Marcus had pulled 2 additional engineers into the executive office. Screens surrounded them like a command center: network traffic, access logs, integrity checks. Nothing. No external connection. No unauthorized login. No malicious code. "These files don't register as foreign objects," Marcus said quietly. "They behave like core system data." Grant paced behind him. "You retelling me my computer is accusing me?" Marcus hesitated. "I am saying the system believes these files belong to you." Grant stopped pacing. "That's absurd." Marcus turned slowly. "Sir, the timestamps show these documents were created over the last 15 years. Incrementally. As events occurred." Grant felt his mouth go dry. "You lying." I wish I were, Marcus replied. Grant leaned over the desk, gripping its edge. Wipe everything. Done. Back it up. Burn it if you have to. Marcus nodded. We'll do a full system reset. New drive. New O's. Nothing survives. 2 hours later, the laptop sat pristine on the desk. No folders. No documents. No reminders of the morning. Grant exhaled deeply for the first time all day. Marcus closed the lid. It's gone. Grant allowed himself a tight smile. Good, you can go. Marcus hesitated. Sir, I've never seen anything like this. If it comes back. It won't. Grant snapped. That's not how reality works. Marcus left. Grant spent the next hour answering emails, forcing himself back into routine. The market steadied him. Familiar numbers. Predictable reactions. At 11:46 p.m. he opened the laptop again. The folders were back. Every one of them. Exactly as before. And there was something new. A single document centered on the screen. Why you can delete this. Grant stared at it for a long time before opening it. The text appeared line by line, as if being written in real time. Technology was created to serve truth, not hide it. You can delete files. You can destroy evidence. But you cannot erase what you chose to become. Grant slammed the laptop shut, his hands trembling. No, he whispered. This isn't happening. Across the city, Elena Ramirez sat in the waiting room of Whitmore Associates again, this time with a thick packet of documents in her lap. She read the first page slowly, carefully. Her name appeared again and again. Beneficiary. Trust holder. Sole authority. Daniel Whitmore sat across from her. Once the transfer is complete, you will control the assets entirely. No board, no oversight beyond regulatory compliance. Elena looked up. Why would my grandfather do this? Whitmore folded his hands. Some people don't trust institutions. They trust character. Elena thought of the man in white. The way he had spoken her name. The letter in her purse. Downtown, Grant Holloway stood at the window of his office, watching traffic move like veins below. For the first time, the view didn't comfort him. He turned back to the laptop. The screen had changed again. A new message waited. You built your empire by taking what wasn't yours. You measured success in silence purchased by fear. Now you will be measured. Below the text, a counter ticked down. 86 days remaining. Grant sank into his chair. He had spent his life believing that power meant options, that there was always another angle, another loophole, another solution money could buy. But as the number blinked on the screen, a realization crept in, cold and undeniable. This wasn't negotiation. It was exposure. At the same moment, Elena Ramirez signed the final preliminary document with shaking hands. When she finished, Whitmore looked at her carefully. This will change your life. Elena nodded. I know. What you choose to do with it, he said, will change many others. Elena slipped the pen back into its holder and stood. Outside, the city moved on unaware. Inside Crown Gate Tower, Grant Holloway stared at a truth that refused to stay buried. And somewhere between justice and mercy, the countdown continued. The first call came at 9:12 m. Grant Holloway recognized the number immediately. Compliance. Sir, the voice on the other end said carefully, we've received notice from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. They're reinitiating a comprehensive audit. Grant closed his eyes. On what grounds? There was a pause. An anonymous evidence package. Grant's grip tightened on the phone. Anonymous. Yes, extremely detailed. Transaction histories, internal communications, client complaints that were never formally filed. Grant hung up without another word. By noon, the elevators opened again, this time not for executives, but for auditors. 3 of them, dark suits, neutral expressions, badges clipped neatly at the waist. They didn't look angry. They looked thorough. Grant Holloway. The woman leading them asked, "I'm Special Examiner Laura Bennett." "Okay, these are my colleagues. We'll need access to all financial records for the last 15 years. Grant forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. We'll cooperate fully." Bennett studied him for a second longer than necessary. "Good, because the documentation we received suggests significant exposure." By mid-afternoon, the building felt different. Phones rang more often. Emails went unanswered. Whispers followed the auditors as they moved from floor to floor, escorted by legal and compliance teams who suddenly looked very small. 2:37 p.m. The first headline appeared. Federal auditors probe Crown Gate Financial after anonymous tip. By 4:10 it was everywhere. Employees refreshed their news feeds between customer interactions. Investors called in rapid succession. The stock ticker at the corner of the executive floor turned red. Grant locked himself in his office. He opened the laptop. The files were still there. A new folder had appeared. Evidence sent. Inside were scanned documents identical to the files on his system. Transmission logs. Timestamps. The note beneath them read, "What was hidden has been delivered." Grant's breath came shallow. This wasn't a threat anymore. It was a process. Downstairs, Elena Ramirez stood behind her teller window, watching auditors pass through the lobby. For years, she had watched executives walk those same paths, confident and untouchable. Now their faces were tight, controlled, afraid. A coworker leaned toward her. "Do you think this has anything to do with that video?" Elena didn't answer. She didn't need to. At 6:02 p.m., Grant's phone rang again. This time it was legal counsel. "Grant," the attorney said bluntly, "you need to prepare yourself. This isn't routine. The evidence is exhaustive." "How exhaustive?" Grant asked. "They have material we can't explain how anyone accessed. Emails that were permanently deleted. Transfer authorizations that never passed through standard systems." Grant looked at the countdown on his screen. The 85 days remaining. "Can you stop this?" he asked. There was a long silence. "No," the lawyer finally said. "At best, we can slow it down." That night, as the city lights flickered on one by one, federal agents arrived quietly. Not with sirens. Not with spectacle. Just credentials and sealed envelopes. They took copies. They asked questions. They didn't accuse yet. In her apartment, Elena Ramirez sat at the kitchen table with her children, helping Mateo with spelling words. The television murmured in the background, tuned to a financial news segment. Crown Gate Financial is under investigation following an unprecedented audit. Elena turned the volume down. Lucas watched her closely. "Mom, is this bad?" Elena chose her words carefully. "It's the truth coming out." Downtown, Grant Holloway stared at his reflection in the darkened glass of his office window. For the first time, he didn't recognize the man looking back. The watchers had arrived, and they weren't leaving. The arrest didn't come with sirens. It came with a knock. Grant Holloway was reviewing a market brief when the sound reached his office door, firm, deliberate, impossible to ignore. He looked up, heart thudding, already knowing. "Mr. Holloway," a voice called from the hallway. "Federal agents." Please open the door. For a split second, Grant considered not answering, as if wood and steel could delay what had already been decided. He straightened his jacket, smoothed his tie, old instincts refusing to die, and opened the door. Two agents stood there, calm and professional. One read from a document. Grant Thomas Holloway, you are being placed under arrest on charges of financial fraud, wire fraud, and exploitation of vulnerable clients. You have the right to remain silent. Grant barely heard the rest. Cold metal closed around his wrists. As they guided him into the hallway, employees stepped back, eyes wide. Phones appeared, then vanished as supervisors hissed warnings that no one obeyed. The elevators descended slowly, each floor ticking past like a verdict. When the doors opened to the lobby, the air changed. People froze mid-step. Conversations died. The polished stone floor reflected Grant's face, paler now, stripped of authority. He had crossed this space 1,000 times, confident and untouched. Now he crossed it again, escorted. At the teller windows, Elena Ramirez looked up. Their eyes met. Grant expected triumph, anger, satisfaction. He saw none of it, though Elena's expression held only sadness and something else he hadn't felt in years. Shame. The revolving doors turned. Flashbulbs exploded outside. Questions flew. Mr. Holloway, did you steal from elderly clients? Is it true millions were diverted offshore? Do you deny the allegations? Grant said nothing. The car door closed. The engine started. And Crown Gate Financial Tower stood behind him, glass and steel gleaming as if nothing had changed. Inside the precinct, time slowed. Personal effects were cataloged. Watch, wallet, ring. Grant's Rolex, worth more than many people made in a year, was sealed in a clear plastic bag and slid across a counter without ceremony. He was fingerprinted, photographed, processed. Then the cell door closed. The space was smaller than his office bathroom. Concrete walls, a narrow steel bed, fluorescent light that never fully turned off. Grant sat down slowly. For the first time in decades, there was no assistant, no attorney on speed dial, no board to impress, no angle to play, just silence and memory. Faces surfaced uninvited. An 82-year-old woman gripping a folder with shaking hands. A widower nodding as Grant assured him the investment was safe. A teller who never complained, never missed a day, never mattered until now. Grant leaned forward, elbows on knees, head in his hands. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he whispered. The words echoed uselessly. In Elena's apartment, the news played softly. Former Crown Gate CEO Grant Holloway was arrested today following a federal audit. Elena turned off the television. Her children looked at her, uncertain. Mom, Safa asked, is everything going to be okay? Elena took a breath. I don't know, she said honestly. But I know the truth matters. Later that night, as Elena lay awake staring at the ceiling, Grant lay awake staring at concrete. The countdown ticked silently in both their lives, no longer a mystery, no longer a warning, a reality. Day 84. And somewhere beyond cameras and courtrooms, beyond power and punishment, the scales continued to move. Slowly, precisely, toward balance. The call came 2 days after the arrest. Elena Ramirez was on her lunch break, sitting alone at a small table in the break room, when her phone vibrated. She recognized the number immediately. Ms. Ramirez, Daniel Whitmore said, his voice calm but different this time, more deliberate. The final confirmations are complete. We need you at my office this afternoon. Elena's heart skipped. Is something wrong? No, Whitmore replied. But something is. Finished. By the time she arrived, the sky over Charlotte had turned a muted gray. The office felt quieter than before, as if even the walls understood the weight of what was about to be spoken. Whitmore didn't waste time. He placed a single document in front of her. "This is the finalized valuation," he said. "All custodial accounts verified. All compliance checks passed." Elena looked down. The number stared back at her. It didn't feel real. She read it again, then again. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. This is the total." "Yes," Whitmore said. "To the dollar." Elena swallowed. "It's more than I can even imagine." The Whitmore nodded. "There's more." He slid another folder across the desk. This one thinner, simpler. "It's a purchase offer," he said. "For Crowngate Financial." Elena frowned, confused. "Why are you showing me this?" Whitmore met her eyes. "Because the board has voted to sell." The room seemed to tilt. "Elena," he continued, "after the arrest, the audit accelerated. Assets were frozen. Investors pulled out. The bank's valuation collapsed faster than anyone predicted." Elena's voice was barely audible. "And the price?" Whitmore turned the document so she could see it clearly. The number was identical. Exactly the same. Down to the last dollar. Elena felt the air leave her lungs. That's impossible," she whispered. Whitmore leaned back in his chair. "In my profession, we avoid words like impossible. But I will say this, I have never seen timing like this." Elena stared at the papers, her hands trembling. My grandfather," she said slowly, "he wrote that the money was to restore what would be broken." Whitmore nodded. "Yes, and according to this offer, Crowngate will be put into receivership if the sale doesn't go through within days." Elena closed her eyes. She saw the lobby, the marble floor, the barefoot man, the way he had spoken her name without hesitation. "Why me?" she asked again. Whitmore didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer. "Because you're the only one who can buy it without debt, without leverage, without obligation to anyone who would continue the harm." Elena shook her head. "I'm a teller." "You were," Whitmore said gently. "Now you're the sole beneficiary of a trust that waited 60 years for someone who wouldn't use power to protect themselves." Silence filled the room. "And there's one more thing," Whitmore added. He reached into the folder and pulled out a single-page addendum. Not legal language. Not type. Handwritten. The same careful script Elena had seen before. "When the number matches, do not hesitate. What was taken must be returned. What was built on fear must be rebuilt on service. The last shall be first." Elena's eyes filled with tears. Across the city, Grant Holloway sat on the edge of a narrow steel bed, hands clasped, staring at the floor. A public defender had visited earlier, explaining charges, timelines, possibilities. Grant heard none of it. His thoughts were fixed on a single truth he could no longer deny. The evidence hadn't come from a rival. The exposure hadn't come from an employee. It had come from somewhere beyond his control. For the first time, he whispered a question he had mocked his entire life. "Who are you?" Back in Whitmore's office, Elena took a deep breath. "If I do this," she said, "people will think I am taking revenge." Whitmore shook his head. "They'll think many things." Elena nodded slowly. "Then I need to be very clear about why I am doing it." She picked up the pen and signed. Outside, the city moved on cars, buses, people rushing to places they believed they controlled. But somewhere beyond contracts and courtrooms, a plan older than any institution had reached its exact moment. The number had matched. And the reversal had begun. The email went out at 6. To mandatory all-hands meeting 9. Under auditorium floor 3. No agenda. No explanation. By 8:40, the auditorium was already filling. 340 employees took their seats in uneasy clusters, whispering, speculating, bracing themselves. The investigation had hollowed the building. People spoke softer now, walked slower. Fear had a sound, and it lived in the room. At 9:00 sharp, the lights dimmed. Gustavo Moreno, the interim president, stepped onto the stage. He looked older than his years, suit hanging looser than before. "Good morning," he began, voice steady but strained. "I'll be direct. As of last night, the sale of Crowngate Financial has been finalized." A ripple ran through the crowd. Moreno raised a hand. "The bank retains its name. Operations continue. But ownership has changed." Someone near the back whispered, "Private equity." Another murmured, "Government takeover." Moreno swallowed. "The new owner asked to speak to you personally." He glanced toward the side of the stage, confused. No one stood there. Then a door at the back of the auditorium opened. Elena Ramirez stepped inside. She wore the same blue teller uniform she had worn for years. No suit, no heels. No security detail. Just steady steps down the aisle she had walked countless times on her way to work. Only now, every eye followed her. Whispers turned into gasps. "That's Elena. The teller. What is she doing up there?" Elena climbed the steps to the stage. Moreno moved aside, stunned. She took the microphone with both hands. "My name is Elena Ramirez," she said. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. "Ivy worked in this building for 18 years. I was ignored, underpaid, sometimes humiliated. I watched coworkers disappear quietly. I watched clients cry quietly. And I stayed quiet because I needed the job." The room was silent. "Last night," she continued, "I became the owner of this bank." The words landed like thunder. Moreno staggered back a step. Employees rose halfway from their seats, then froze. Elena lifted a sheet of paper. "I am not here to talk about how this happened. I am here to tell you what happens now." She took a breath. "First, there will be no layoffs. If you worked here and were not involved in fraud, your job is secure." A wave of relief swept the room, audible, collective. "Second, effective next month, all salaries under $2,000 a month will increase by 150%. Benefits will be expanded. Paid leave will be honored." Tears appeared. Hands covered mouths. "Third, the 89 employees dismissed unfairly over the last 15 years will be contacted. Reinstatement will be offered, with compensation for lost time." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then rising. "Fourth, a restitution fund will be created. Every client who was defrauded will be repaid in full. Not because the law demands it, because justice does." The applause grew. "Fifth, discrimination ends today. Age, gender, accent, appearance. If you do the work with excellence and treat people with dignity, you belong here." The room stood. Elena raised her hand, asking for quiet. "And finally, 30% of this bank's annual profits will go back into the community microloans, financial counseling, scholarships. This building will not exist to extract. It will exist to serve." The doors at the back opened again. A man in white walked in, barefoot. The auditorium inhaled as one. Some recognized him immediately from the viral video. Others felt something shift they couldn't name. Elena stepped away from the microphone and walked down the steps. She dropped to her knees before him. "You're the one," she said, voice breaking. You set this in motion." He helped her to her feet, smiling not with triumph, but with peace. "I restored what was taken," he said gently, "and I gave voice to what was silenced." Someone shouted from the crowd, "Who are you?" The man turned to face them all. "I'm a carpenter," he said. "I build new things from dead wood. I once said, 'The last shall be first, and the first shall be last.' Today, you've seen that promise fulfilled." Some saw the scars in his hands. Others didn't, but felt the air change, as if something heavy had lifted. "Power doesn't reveal character," he continued. "It amplifies it. Elena was faithful with little. Now she's been trusted with much." He looked across the room. "This place will be watched. Where the humble are lifted, I remain. Where cruelty returns, I will intervene." He turned and walked toward the exit. People parted instinctively, creating a path. At the doors, he paused. "Remember, no human title outranks service. The true president of this bank is not Elena. It is the carpenter who builds justice." He stepped through the doors. Security footage would later show something impossible, his figure dissolving into the morning light. The room stood in stunned silence. Then applause, loud, unrestrained, trembling the walls. Elena Ramirez remained at the center of the stage, tears on her cheeks, heart pounding. The reversal was complete, and the work had just begun. 3 years later, Crowngate Financial no longer felt like a fortress. The glass still caught the sun in the mornings, and the lobby still gleamed, but the air had changed. People smiled more. Conversations didn't hush when executives passed. The marble floor reflected movement that felt lighter, freer, as if the building itself had exhaled. Universities studied the turnaround. Business schools called it servant leadership in practice. Analysts marveled at the numbers. Profits stabilized, then grew. Customer trust returned. Employee retention rose to record highs. No one could fully explain why a bank that chose people over margins had become one of the most resilient institutions in the region. Elena Ramirez could. Her office was on the 32nd floor now, but she refused to call it the president's office. The plaque on the door read simply, "Office of Service." Inside there were no framed awards, no leather throne of a chair. The desk was plain wood. The walls held photos, employees with their families, handwritten thank you notes from elderly clients who had been repaid, a small wooden cross carved by a local craftsman. Elena began each morning the same way she always had, early, quiet, prayerful. Power still unsettled her. Every decision felt heavy. Every signature mattered. She remembered the warning written in careful script. "Do not fear power, fear forgetting why you were given it." She did not forget. Across the state, in a correctional facility 2 hours away, Grant Holloway learned how to listen. Prison stripped away everything that had once defined him. The tailored suits, the boardrooms, the belief that control equaled safety. What remained was time and memory. The first months were unbearable, the noise, the routines, the shame. But shame, when it stayed, became something else. Conviction. Grant began helping others with paperwork, appeals they didn't understand, letters they were afraid to write. He taught basic financial literacy classes when the warden allowed it. Not as an expert, as a cautionary tale. At night, alone in his cell, he prayed. Not for release, not for reputation, for forgiveness. One afternoon in his 7th year, a letter arrived. No return address. Plain envelope. Inside, a single page. "I have seen your repentance. It has taken root. When you leave this place, there will be work for you. Not as a leader, but as a servant. You will begin where you once despised. If you accept this path, we will meet again not as accuser and accused, but as brothers. Grant read it 7 times. He wept not with despair, but with something that felt like relief. Back at Crown Gate, Elena stood before the window one evening as the city lights flickered on. She felt the familiar presence behind her before she heard a sound. "You've done well," a gentle voice said. She turned. The man in white stood there barefoot, calm, unchanged. Her heart raced. "Every day I worry I'll become what I replaced." He smiled. "That fear keeps you honest." He looked around the room. The kingdom of God isn't a single moment. It's a daily choice. To lift, to restore, to remember. "Will you come back?" Elena asked. "I never left," he replied. "I am here when you choose dignity, when you protect the vulnerable, when you serve instead of rule." He stepped toward the door, then paused. "You are my hands here now. My voice, use them well." When Elena opened the door a moment later, the hallway was empty, but the air felt different, like fresh, cut wood, like bread still warm. Years passed. Crown Gate became a model for ethical banking. Elder fraud dropped sharply in the region. Microloans launched businesses that hired neighbors. Scholarships sent first-generation students to college. And when Grant Holloway was released early for good behavior, he didn't walk into a corner office. He stood behind a teller window. On his first day, Elena greeted him quietly. No speeches, no cameras. "Welcome," she said. "We serve people here." Grant nodded. "I know." Sometimes customers noticed the humility in his voice. Sometimes they did tea. It didn't matter. For the first time in his life, his work felt clean. On an ordinary morning, sunlight spilling across the marble, Elena paused at the edge of the lobby. She watched employees help clients with patience. She watched Grant explain a deposit slip to an elderly man, slowly, kindly. She whispered a prayer she had learned to pray every day. "Thank you for remembering me when I was invisible." Somewhere beyond glass and steel, beyond systems and titles, a kingdom continued to grow quietly, faithfully, where the last are lifted, the first are humbled, and justice is rebuilt one choice at a time. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt invisible like Elena, or trapped by your own choices like Grant, share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are right now? And if you want more stories like this, stories of justice restored, lives transformed, and hope reborn, subscribe to Heaven Walks with Us. Walk with us. You are not alone.